All right, let's talk politics. You know we would. President Trump's in Florida at Mar-a-Lago, but he's staying on the defensive following the release of the special counsel's report into Russian interference in the 2016 election. The president lashed out on Twitter Saturday morning. He wrote, quote, "The end result of the greatest witch hunt in U.S. political history is no collusion with Russia and no obstruction." Pretty amazing. Mueller's report does not include the president obstructed justice, but it also does not exonerate him. The president's victory lap comes as Massachusetts Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren became the first 2020 presidential candidate to call for Congress to begin impeachment proceedings. But Speaker Nancy Pelosi and other House Democratic leaders have stayed non-committal on that question of impeachment, at least so far. In response to Senator Warren, a spokeswoman for Mrs. Pelosi said, quote, "As the Speaker has said repeatedly, one step at a time, we're focused on getting the full unredacted version of the report and its underlying documents, as well as hearing from Mueller. The report raises more questions and concerns that we believe the American people deserve answers to." House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler has issued a subpoena for the full unredacted Mueller report. He and 5 other top Democrats rejected an offer to view just some of the report's hidden sections. But the Justice Department's pushing back, calling the move premature, at least for now. Joining me are Niall Stanage and Jesse Weber. Niall's a White House columnist for The Hill. Jesse is an attorney and host on the Law and Crime Network. Niall, we'll start with you. You wrote 2 columns this week on the Mueller report. Your first from Thursday calls it a win for the president, saying, quote, "The big picture remains no collusion. Trump will be more than satisfied with the outcome, given the gravity of the threat Mueller posed." But your second from Saturday morning says, quote, "The depiction will enrage a president who fixates on the concept of strength and is hypersensitive without any suggestion that he is not in absolute control of his administration." So which do you believe is more accurate, one or two?
Well, I don't think they're mutually exclusive, and of course you'd expect me to say that, I imagine. But the distinction is that one refers to the legalities and the danger of there being a finding in the Mueller report that was absolutely catastrophic for the president and made some kind of impeachment push inevitable. That didn't happen. The central question of collusion, Mr. Mueller did not find enough evidence to establish. Now, that's a different point from the politics. And on the politics, we have depicted a White House where the president's instructions are ignored or slow-walked. It's a familiar dynamic to lots of people from their workplaces where the boss says crazy stuff and you try to avoid acting on it without telling him outright no. But of course, in this case, the boss is the President of the United States.
Jesse, look, when I watched the Attorney General give his speech that morning, he really focused on collusion. In all fairness, he did say there are some points in there that deal with obstruction that might inflame you do that. How did you read the Attorney General's press conference before the report came out? What do you think about that?
It was interesting. It was almost like instructions before you're given an exam. These are things to think about before you go in there. I mean, really, when we were talking about for the past 2.5 years, it was all collusion, collusion, collusion. Obstruction of justice came at the second half. So really the big part about it was this collusion factor. I thought it was interesting, and I'll tell you why. Based upon his letter, that 4-page letter, and his press conference, I was expecting to see something a little bit different. Now, the conclusions are the same.
Different how?
I'll tell you how. The obstruction question. When he said that there were difficult questions of fact and law, I was expecting to see those 10 or 11 episodes and me look at it and say, I don't know which way to go with this. There were some that were clear-cut. There were some that really seemed a stronger case of obstruction of justice. What I really want to see now is I want to understand the legal analysis that went into looking at that and saying this is not obstruction of justice. I disagreed with Mueller on that.
Okay, so you bring up a good point. But is he in any way compelled to tell us what his legal analysis and why he decided this or that? I mean, are we going to get what you just presented?
Probably not.
Okay, so there you go.
Well, if Mueller is subpoenaed and he comes forward, they're going to ask him, do you agree with William Barr's assessment of your report?
Fair, but at the end of the day, you make a good point. So Mueller punted. Mueller said, I'm not going to make a decision. I'm leaving it up to Barr. Barr, beyond his press conference, I don't know that he's going to come out and give us the guts of what he thought and decided and mulled over, right?
Well, David, I'll take you one step. You assume that Mueller wanted Barr to make that determination. There's debate out there whether or not who did he want to actually make that determination. If you listen to William Barr, Mueller conceded the fact and said, hey, listen, it's his prerogative but is it who he thought this report was ultimately going to be made to?
Okay, that's fair, but he knew he was bringing the report to the Attorney General.
Absolutely.
He knew the Attorney General was the first guy to say yea or nay.
Absolutely. And what was interesting was when I read the report, why did he punt it? You know, if it really was a difficult question and he didn't want to make that determination, that's one thing. But then throughout the report, he said, these are all the things that I considered when looking at the report, including the fact there's the Office of Legal Counsel's opinion that you can't indict a sitting president. Also on top of the fact that since there really was no collusion, it presents a more difficult question for obstruction. And so I just wanted a clear analysis of why did he not make that decision? Why did he punt it? That's also something I wanted to see, and I'm not sure we had a clear understanding of that.
And he doesn't have to give us that.
No.
Niall, as we saw, Senator Warren became the first presidential candidate to call for Congress to begin impeachment proceedings. Do you expect that more of the 2020 hopefuls are going to come out in favor of impeachment? I mean, is Warren on her own? Who else on that side has said, let's start it?
Well, Julian Castro has suggested that they should, but I do expect Elizabeth Warren will be joined by other Democratic candidates in calling for impeachment. Look, basically, it's in their interest to do so. The Democratic base is obviously fervently opposed to Trump, would be kindly disposed toward impeachment proceedings. But as you alluded to in your introduction, David, Democratic leaders on Capitol Hill are much more sceptical. They worry about how that would resound with the general electorate. They worry, frankly, about giving President Trump a weapon to push back against the Democratic Party generally, to say, look, Trump's saying, I'm focused on the people's business, and they want to score political points even after Mueller has concluded no collusion. So that's why there's skepticism from Nancy Pelosi and others.
Jesse, Jerry Nadler said yesterday, we actually took his news conference live, he said, I'm going to issue a subpoena and I'm going to tell them to send me the unredacted. What kind of heartburn can he give to Trump? And beyond heartburn, what can he actually do, right? Like, what authority does he have now that Barr has said we're not going to charge the president with a crime? And that's a big deal. Mm-hmm. What can Nadler do?
He can be a headache. He can try to subpoena.
But more than that.
But, well, here's the thing. He could try to subpoena Robert Mueller to testify and give more answers. What Robert Mueller would actually say is a different question. He can try to subpoena to get that full unredacted report. It's not going to happen. We have those redactions for a reason.
You don't think? Okay.
A full unredacted report,
not gonna happen.
No, where it's completely clean, I don't think so.
And if he were able to see it privately, he wouldn't be able to say publicly what he saw, right?
No. And let me explain why. One of the things that Barr said in his press conference that I think everybody can agree with is that these redactions weren't politically motivated. They're based on law. This is protecting very important information, not just grand jury material, but also the efforts and methods of our counterintelligence. And also, it really would put potentially people's lives in jeopardy if you release certain information to at least one other person and the public at large. There's really a point here, and that's something that really has to be considered. You have to be very careful with what can be seen and by whom.
I just wonder how much more of a sting Nadler can make to the president beyond what folks have already seen this week with the report.
The Democrats, the Jerry Nadler, they're going to try to make anything out of this. And really the point is, interesting when we talk about impeachment, it's not a legal proceeding, it's a political proceeding.
Totally.
And so this isn't going to be the end of it. They're going to take what I knew was going to happen. When this report came out, it just rewound the clock to about a month ago when everybody was still speculating and making their own assessments of what President Trump did and what he didn't do. And that's all that this did. Well, now it puts it back in the court of public opinion.
I will say you get to hold up that report now, and when when the president says, no, your sources are BS and your reporting is BS, you got a 408-page Mueller report that you can say, no, it's not the case.
It's a great move for Trump.
Niall, Democrats want Robert Mueller to testify. May 23rd is the date we've been given. Jerry Nadler has extended the invite to the Attorney General William Barr, and he said he'd be okay with that. What kind of information do you think they still want from them beyond what we already know that's in the report?
Do they want information, or do they want to create political embarrassment? In Bill Barr's case, I think it's more likely to be the latter. In Mueller's case, I think it is more likely to be information. And to the very important point Jesse raised a few moments ago, I think they want to know why exactly he did stay on the fence on the obstruction issue, why he was so accepting of the guidelines that a president cannot be indicted. And thirdly, and perhaps most importantly of all, was he saying that Barr was the person who should make that decision, or was it in essence referring his findings to Congress? That's an absolutely crucial difference, and I'd imagine his questioners would hammer quite hard on that point.
The Attorney General, Jesse, is actually going to testify on May 1st. Let's say you're in the seat. What's your first question?
I want to know exactly what did you see based upon those 10 episodes that was an obstruction? Can you walk us through it?
That was not.
Exactly.
Good question.
What is your legal reasoning? And by the way, he might be 100% right. I want to know where they differed.
Okay, but Counselor, tell me, if you were a prosecutor,
sure,
would you prosecute based on what's in that report?
That is such a complicated question, and I'll tell you why. You're talking about the President of the United States. There are a number of considerations, and if you were going to go after anybody, you want to have a slam dunk case. And based upon that report, it doesn't seem there was a slam dunk case, but I just want to know why. What was missing from that report? Because what you saw was a really thorough analysis, a legal analysis at key points, but then there were other points that were missing. If there was no disagreement about the fact, that's one other question I want to mention too. Barr said that he disagreed with Mueller on legal theories, but not facts. I just want to make it clear. Do you disagree with any of the points put forward by Robert Mueller? Because if you listen to President Trump, he said half those things in that report were inaccurate. Is that true?
So here's my follow-up. If it wasn't the president, would you charge him?
It depends upon who it is. I would think that there would be certain points, certain aspects that you could charge. Doesn't mean you'd have a successful prosecution. Let's make that very clear as well.
Bingo. Niall Stanage, Jesse Weber. I thought it was going to be kind of old hat, boring, same old stuff of the week, and y'all made it interesting. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks.